Before we dive into the story of humility, kindness, and hidden strength that reminds us never to judge others by their appearance or social status, let me know where you are watching from in the comments section. Hit the like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy powerful, emotional, and inspirational stories filled with life lessons. Now let's find out what happened to Maria, the maid. Maria had been working as a maid in the wealthy Williams household for nearly 2 years. To anyone who visited the sprawling mansion, she was just another face among the staff, quiet, diligent, and seemingly invisible. She rose before dawn, scrubbed floors, dusted chandeliers, and washed dishes that seemed to multiply endlessly after every lavish dinner party. She hardly spoke unless spoken to, and when she did, her voice was soft, almost hesitant. For many in the Williams household, her silence was mistaken for weakness. The mockery began subtly, with whispers and sneers among the younger family members. "Look at her clothes," sneered Chloe, the Williams' teenage daughter, one afternoon while Maria was polishing silverware. "It's like she doesn't even know what fashion is. She probably buys all her things at a secondhand store." Her friends giggled, tossing glances at Maria, who simply kept her head down and continued her work. Soon, the mockery became less hidden. When Maria walked into a room, conversations would pause and smirks would form. During parties, some guests would make snide jokes about the help within earshot, knowing she wouldn't retaliate. Even among some of the other staff members, Maria's reserved demeanor made her an easy target. They teased her for eating simple meals during breaks, for keeping to herself, for not owning a smartphone like everyone else. Despite the taunts, Maria never fought back. Instead, she worked harder. If the floors needed extra scrubbing, she scrubbed them. If guests spilled wine, she cleaned without complaint. Her quiet endurance puzzled some, but irritated others even more. Chloe, in particular, seemed to take a special delight in belittling her. She once spilled juice deliberately on the carpet just to watch Maria drop to her knees to clean it, muttering, "That's what you're good for." What no one realized, however, was that Maria carried a secret so profound that, if revealed, it would turn every mocking laugh into stunned silence. For behind her lowered eyes and quiet demeanor was a story far richer than anyone in that mansion could have imagined. Her life before she became a maid was not the life of obscurity they assumed. She had once walked in places they only dreamed of, spoken in rooms filled with power and prestige, and held a name that carried weight far beyond the walls of the Williams estate. But for now, Maria kept that truth buried, letting their mockery wash over her like water on stone, waiting for the day when fate would bring it all to light. Behind Maria's silence was a world that none of the Williams family, or even the staff, could have guessed. Every night, when her duties were finally done and the house had quieted down, Maria retreated to the small room tucked away above the garage, the quarter she had been assigned when she was first hired. To most, it was a plain and cramped space, a single bed, a wooden chair, and a narrow desk. But on that desk sat something that gave away glimpses of her hidden world, a leather-bound notebook and a stack of old photographs. In the glow of her small lamp, Maria would often sit with a notebook open, writing lines in neat, practiced handwriting. The words she wrote were not the simple jottings of a housemaid, but carefully crafted paragraphs filled with thought and depth. She wrote of life, of injustice, of dreams shattered and rebuilt. Had anyone cared to peek inside, they would have discovered the mind of a woman with education, eloquence, and vision far beyond her current station. The photographs told an even deeper story. There were pictures of her standing before large university buildings, wearing graduation robes, shaking hands with professors. Others showed her at conferences, seated beside prominent figures whose names appeared frequently in the news. And then there was the most shocking photo of all, a young Maria, poised at a podium, speaking passionately to a packed hall while a banner above her read, "International Human Rights Summit." Maria had once been more than just a maid. She had been a rising figure in social justice circles, known for her sharp mind and unwavering voice against inequality. Her speeches had moved audiences, her writings had been published in journals, and she had been on the path to a remarkable future. But then life had taken a cruel turn. A tragedy she rarely spoke of had stripped her of everything: her family, her wealth, her career. Betrayal by someone she trusted had left her vulnerable, and in the aftermath, she had chosen to disappear from the world that once praised her. Taking work as a maid gave her both anonymity and survival. It was the one place where she could vanish, unseen, unrecognized. Still, despite her fall from public view, Maria never let go of who she truly was. Each night she wrote. Each night she remembered. Each night she nurtured the spark of the woman she once had been. And though those around her saw only a maid, she carried within her the power of someone who had walked through fire and survived. What the Williams family could not have known was that fate was already moving, preparing to pull Maria's past into the present. A single moment, unexpected and unplanned, would soon shatter the walls of mockery around her. When the truth emerged, those who had laughed the loudest would find their voices silenced by awe and shame. The truth revealed itself on a day that began as ordinary as any other. Maria had just finished polishing the dining room table when she heard the sound of hurried footsteps and raised voices at the front door. The Williams family was preparing to host a grand dinner for important guests, politicians, business leaders, and a few high-profile figures from the local community. It was the kind of evening where appearances mattered more than anything else, and Maria had been given a long list of chores to complete. As the guests began to arrive, Maria moved quietly in the background, serving drinks and ensuring the dishes were in place. But then something unexpected happened. One of the guests, a well-known professor of law, stopped mid-sentence as his eyes landed on Maria. His glass nearly slipped from his hand. "Maria, is that really you?" he asked, his voice carrying both disbelief and recognition. The room fell silent. Heads turned toward the professor, then toward Maria. For a moment, she froze, torn between denying her identity and acknowledging the truth. But the professor, visibly overwhelmed, continued before she could speak. "You were the keynote speaker at the International Human Rights Summit in Geneva, weren't you? I remember your address on justice and dignity. It moved the entire hall. You're Maria Alvarez, the scholar and activist." The air shifted. The Williams family stared at their maid, stunned. The guests, whispering among themselves, began pulling out phones, quickly searching her name. Within seconds, headlines and articles flashed across screens. Maria Alvarez, voice for the voiceless. Young scholar breaks barriers at international forums. Promising activist mysteriously disappears. Every mocking laugh, every condescending word the Williams family had ever thrown at Maria came rushing back to them, now painted in shame. The maid they had treated as invisible was not only educated, but had once stood on global stages commanding respect and admiration. Maria, though visibly uncomfortable, held her head high. She had not wanted this revelation, but now that it had come, she would not shrink from it. "Yes," she finally said, her voice calm but firm. "I am Maria Alvarez. Once I fought for justice. Life had other plans, and I found myself here." Gasps filled the room. The professor stepped forward, shaking her hand with reverence. "You mustn't hide anymore, Maria. Your voice is needed now more than ever." The Williams family, red with embarrassment, could not meet her eyes. Their arrogance had been stripped bare in front of everyone they wished to impress. What was meant to be their evening of prestige had turned into an evening of reckoning. That night marked the beginning of a shift. The whispers of just a maid were gone. In their place came questions, invitations, and offers. Maria's past, once buried beneath silence, had come roaring back into the light, and with it, the world began to see her not as a servant, but as the woman she truly was. Yet, while others marveled, Maria knew the revelation was only the beginning. With her truth now exposed, the choices she made next would decide whether she returned to the life she had abandoned, or carved out an entirely new one. The Williams family had always prided themselves on their reputation, their wealth, their connections, and their supposed class. They relished belittling Maria, dismissing her as nothing more than the help, a woman too insignificant to warrant kindness. But after the night of the dinner party, when Maria's true identity was unveiled, the cracks in their carefully polished image began to show. Word spread quickly. Guests whispered about how the powerful Williams family had kept a renowned activist hidden in their home, treating her like dirt while parading their own false sophistication. Rumors traveled beyond whispers, first to social circles, then to the media. Before long, headlines appeared. Wealthy families made exposed as international human rights scholar, and Williams' family faces backlash from mocking former activists. At first, the Williamses tried to control the damage. Mrs. Williams denied any mistreatment, insisting Maria had been like family. But no one believed her. Several guests recalled sharp words and condescending tones they'd heard directed at Maria. Others spoke of the visible exhaustion on her face, the way she was ordered about as if she were beneath notice. Every attempt at damage control only made the family appear more desperate. Then came the real blow. A major business partner, one who prided himself on ethical values, severed ties with Mr. Williams, stating publicly that he could not align with people who degraded others. Invitations to elite events dried up. The same society that once celebrated the Williams family now viewed them with contempt. Meanwhile, their children, who had often mocked Maria in private and in public, found themselves facing unexpected consequences too. At school, their classmates repeated the story, labeling them spoiled bullies. Friendships crumbled. The very arrogance they had displayed toward Maria became the source of their humiliation. But karma worked in deeper ways as well. With their social standing collapsing, the Williamses began to feel the sting of isolation. Those who once praised them now crossed the street to avoid being associated with their scandal. Behind closed doors, arguments broke out. Mrs. Williams blaming her husband, Mr. Williams snapping back, and the children resenting the cold silence that filled their once boisterous home. For the first time, the family who had looked down on Maria now found themselves on the receiving end of judgment and ridicule. Their wealth remained, but their influence, the thing they valued most, slipped through their fingers. They had mocked Maria for her quiet presence, but the revelation of her dignity and past achievements had turned their mockery into their downfall. Ironically, it was Maria who showed the most grace in this season of their disgrace. When approached by reporters for comments, she never spoke ill of the family. She simply said, "We are all human. Sometimes people don't see the worth in others until it is too late." Her words, calm and unaccusing, only magnified the contrast between her character and theirs. The Williamses, once admired, now became the cautionary tale, proof that cruelty toward the vulnerable often returns multiplied. They had sown mockery and arrogance, and now they reaped shame and regret. But for Maria, this karmic turn of events was not about revenge. It was about something deeper, the reclaiming of her dignity and the vindication of her truth. The tables had turned, and she stood taller than ever. In the weeks that followed, Maria's life changed in ways she hadn't imagined. What was once quiet servitude behind the walls of the Williams household became an open stage for recognition. Universities reached out, asking if she would consider lecturing again. Nonprofit organizations wanted her voice at their conferences. Students and young activists wrote letters thanking her for her past work and encouraging her to continue. Yet, through all of this, Maria remained humble. She had not sought fame or validation when she returned to housekeeping. She only wanted peace, a chance to live quietly after years of sacrifice. But destiny had a way of finding those who had walked the hard road of service, and Maria could no longer hide from the truth of who she was. The Williams family, meanwhile, faced a reckoning. Their once proud name had been tarnished, and while some of their wealth protected them from ruin, the humiliation cut deeper than any financial loss. At first, they avoided Maria altogether, unable to face the quiet strength that now seemed to radiate from her. But one evening, Mrs. Williams knocked on her door, her face pale and her voice trembling. "Maria," she whispered, we owe you an apology. We were blind. We treated you like you were less than us, when in truth, you were more than we could ever hope to be. Please forgive us." Maria studied her for a long moment. She saw genuine remorse, not just in Mrs. Williams, but in the entire family who had gathered behind her, their pride finally broken. And though she had every right to turn away, Maria's heart, seasoned by years of compassion and hardship, could not cling to bitterness. "I forgive you," she said softly, "but forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It's a lesson you must carry with you. Remember this: kindness costs nothing, but cruelty will always cost more than you can afford." Those words lingered long after Maria left their home. For yes, she did leave. With the support of new opportunities and the encouragement of those who admired her, Maria moved into a modest apartment of her own. She began lecturing again, mentoring young women, and advocating for those whose voices were often silenced. Her story, once hidden in the shadows of the Williams mansion, became a beacon of resilience and hope. The Williams family never fully regained their former glory, but in a way, that was their redemption. They became quieter, less arrogant, more mindful of how they treated others. They learned to live without the applause of society, focusing instead on humility. And though they rarely spoke of it aloud, they knew their transformation had begun the night they discovered who Maria truly was. For Maria, the journey was never about revenge, but about truth. The truth that dignity doesn't wear uniforms or carry titles. The truth that kindness can lift a person higher than wealth ever will. And the truth that no matter how others try to diminish you, your worth cannot be erased. As she stood before an auditorium full of young people months later, Maria ended her speech with words that echoed her own life. "Do not let the world tell you who you are. Sometimes, the very people who mock you today will be the ones silenced by your strength tomorrow. Live with grace, walk in truth, and never forget that your worth is beyond measure." The audience rose in applause, tears glistening in their eyes. Maria smiled, not because she sought their praise, but because she knew her story, once hidden and mocked, was now helping others rise. And that, at last, was her greatest triumph.